I'll warn you only once. Get ready. The moon is much wilder, stranger, and more mysterious than you could ever imagine. And by the time you reach the end of these geographical facts about it, you will know exactly why I say this. 35. Europe's highest wave depends on the moon. At Mont Saint-Michel in France, the difference between low tide and high tide can exceed 14 meters during exceptional spring tides. This phenomenon is no coincidence. It occurs when the moon, earth, and sun align in syzygy, amplifying the gravitational pull that drags the Atlantic Ocean towards the Norman coast. The result is a tide that advances at the speed of a galloping horse, completely surrounding the medieval abbey and transforming the place into an island within hours. What's striking is that this spectacle is not just visual. For centuries, it shaped military defense and access to the monastery. Miscalculated pilgrims could get trapped by the rising water. The moon, nearly 384,000 kilometers away, is directly responsible for periodically turning a stone monument into a floating maritime fortress. 34. The place where tides rise like a four-story building. In the Bay of Fundy, between Canada and Nova Scotia, the highest tides on the planet are recorded, with differences that can exceed 16 meters. This extreme amplification is due to the funnel shape of the bay and the near-perfect synchronization between the natural oscillation period of the water and the lunar gravitational cycle. Twice a day, millions of tons of water flow in and out like the ocean breathing to the rhythm of the moon. In some ports, boats rest on the seabed at low tide and float hours later without having moved from their spot. It's a brutal demonstration that the natural satellite doesn't just move the sea, it can make an entire coastline rise and fall like a giant elevator. 33. The volcano that beats with the lunar calendar. In Indonesia, Mount Merapi volcano shows measurable variations in internal pressure coinciding with earth tide cycles, a lesser-known phenomenon than ocean tides. The moon's gravity not only moves water, it also slightly deforms the Earth's crust, raising and lowering it several centimeters daily. In sensitive volcanic systems, these micro-deformations can alter magma pressure. Although the moon does not cause eruptions by itself, it can act as a modulating factor when the system is already on the edge. It's unsettling to think that the same gravitational pull that lifts the Atlantic also subtly stretches fiery mountains in the Pacific Ring of Fire. 32. The natural bridge that only appears under the full moon. In Jindo, South Korea, a phenomenon known as the Moses Miracle occurs. Twice a year during extremely low tides associated with specific lunar alignments, a nearly 3-kilometer-long path emerges connecting the island to Modo. Thousands of people walk on the exposed seabed while the sea temporarily parts. The event depends on spring tides reinforced by the lunar position. Outside those days, the passage completely disappears underwater. Here, the moon not only transforms coastal landscapes, it creates ephemeral roads that exist for only a few hours before being erased again. 31. The African lake that overflows with the moon, Lake Victoria, shared by Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, experiences measurable oscillations related to lake tides induced by lunar gravity. Although much subtler than ocean tides, these variations can affect coastal levels by centimeters, enough to influence shallow fishing areas. The surprising thing is that even vast continental water masses respond to the lunar gravitational pull. The classic image associating tides only with the sea is incomplete. The moon also makes giant inland lakes breathe, discreetly altering shorelines in the heart of Africa. Before continuing, make sure to subscribe and leave a like to keep discovering the strange and incredible geography of our entire planet. 30. The desert where the moon guides nocturnal life. In the Sonoran Desert between Mexico and the United States, many species synchronize their activity with lunar brightness. During full moon nights, some rodents reduce their movement to avoid visually hunting predators, while other animals take advantage of the extra light to move with less energy expenditure. The brightness intensity of a full moon can multiply the clarity by hundreds compared to a moonless night, enough to cast defined shadows on the sand. In an environment where daytime temperatures are lethal, the moon acts as an indirect regulator of the biological rhythm of the entire nocturnal ecosystem. 29. The fjord, where the moon accelerates violent currents. At Saltstraumen near Bodo, one of the most powerful tidal whirlpools in the world forms. Every 6 hours, huge volumes of water are forced through a narrow channel, reaching speeds that can exceed 35 kilometers per hour. The force driving this spectacle is the tidal cycle governed by lunar gravity. When the moon and the sun align, currents intensify further. creating visible whirlpools from the surface. It's a reminder that the satellite not only raises and lowers water, it can concentrate its energy in natural narrows to turn them into real ocean centrifuges. 28. The city where the moon influences surface earthquakes. In Tokyo, located at a complex plate tectonic junction, statistical studies have observed slight increases in the probability of micro-earthquakes during maximum Earth tide periods. Lunar gravity may generate minimal additional tensions on already energy-loaded faults. Though the effect is small and not determinative alone, in extremely sensitive tectonic systems, even tiny variations can act as triggers. It's unsettling to think that the same force illuminating the night also stretches and compresses imperceptibly the crust under one of the world's most populous megacities. 27. The reef that depends on the lunar calendar for reproduction. In the Great Barrier Reef, Australia, millions of corals simultaneously release eggs and sperm in a massive event synchronized with specific moon phases, usually after the Australian spring full moon. This phenomenon turns the water into a pink cloud visible even from space. Lunar synchronization maximizes fertilization probabilities by coordinating colonies separated by kilometers. Without the stable temporal signal provided by the lunar cycle, this biological choreography would lose effectiveness. Here, the moon not only moves oceans, it marks the reproductive clock of one of the planet's largest and most complex ecosystems. 26. The cliff where the moon creates rock tides. At the cliffs of Moher in Ireland, the combined force of lunar spring tides and Atlantic storms can amplify wave impact to levels capable of breaking tons of rock in a single event. During intense lunar alignments, the sea level reaches points allowing waves to hit areas normally out of reach. Over time, these extreme tides sculpt sea caves and natural arches that later collapse. The dramatic silhouette of the cliffs is not only the product of wind and water, it is a slow and constant work of lunar gravitational pull amplified by coastal geography. 25. The river that reverses its flow because of the moon. In the Amazon River near the Brazilian city of Macapá, a phenomenon known as the pororoca occurs, a tidal wave that moves upriver when the lunar attraction generates especially intense Atlantic tides. At certain times of the year, the ocean's force is so great that the Amazon's freshwater not only slows, but temporarily flows backward. The wall of water can exceed 4 meters in height and advance tens of kilometers inland, sweeping shores and generating a roar heard before it's seen. Extreme surfers await the exact lunar calendar to ride this river wave. It is one of the few places on Earth where the moon forces the world's largest river to flow in the opposite direction. 24. The inland sea that also has lunar tides. The Mediterranean Sea seems too enclosed to experience large tides, but in the Venice Lagoon, Italy, the combination of lunar phases and atmospheric pressure can trigger a phenomenon known as acqua alta. During spring tides, water levels rise enough to flood historic squares within hours. In extreme events, St. Mark's Square can be covered by tens of centimeters of salty water. Although wind and weather influence the situation, the gravitational basis remains lunar. It's an example of how even apparently calm seas respond to the celestial cycle, directly affecting cities built more than 1,000 years ago. 23. The glacier that fractures with the rhythm of the tides. In Greenland, Jakobshavn Glacier, one of the fastest in the world, experiences measurable variations in its flow speed coinciding with tide cycles. The moon doesn't just move the ocean in front of the glacier, the rise and fall of water changes pressure at its front, slightly accelerating or slowing its advance toward the sea. These oscillations may seem small, but in a system already moving kilometers per year, any variation is significant. The ice cracks, fragments, and produces giant icebergs in a process that literally pulses with the lunar calendar. It's proof that the gravitational influence reaches even the Arctic ice masses. 22. The desert, where the moon radically changes the temperature. In the Sahara Desert, especially in Algeria, a full moon can mark noticeable nighttime thermal differences compared to moonless nights. While the effect isn't purely gravitational, intense lunar illumination slightly reduces the radiative cooling speed at the surface compared to completely dark nights. In an environment where temperatures can drop more than 20 degrees after sunset, any variation influences animal and human activity. Historically, traditional caravans planned night journeys taking advantage of the full moon's better visibility, reducing the risks of disorientation in a landscape without clear landmarks. Here, the satellite doesn't move sand but conditions how the Sea of Dunes is crossed. 21. The Strait, where the moon creates an invisible highway. In the Strait of Gibraltar between Spain and Morocco, lunar tides generate alternating currents connecting the Atlantic with the Mediterranean. Every 6 hours, the flow changes direction, creating a complex dynamic of exchanging water masses with differing salinities. This marine heartbeat partially regulates the Mediterranean renewal and has influenced naval routes for centuries. Navigating there requires understanding not only the wind, but the lunar calendar. It's a funnel where the moon's gravity organizes the transit of millions of cubic meters of water between two marine worlds. 20. The salt lake that also feels the lunar pull. The Great Salt Lake in Utah experiences small but measurable oscillations related to lunar tides. Although changes barely reach a few centimeters, they can influence extremely flat areas where the shoreline is diffuse. In hypersaline environments, a minimal variation can alter the extent of temporary marshes, affecting colonies of migratory birds. It's fascinating that even in a landlocked lake with no sea outlet, lunar gravity still marks an almost imperceptible but scientifically detectable hydrological pulse. 19. The reef where fish spawn only under new moon. In parts of the Mesoamerican reef off Belize, certain fish species synchronize spawning with the new moon phase when darkness is greatest and visual predation risk decreases. The timing choice is not random. The lunar calendar provides a stable and predictable signal in the open ocean. Thousands of individuals gather at specific reef points during windows lasting just hours. The combination of tidal currents and biological synchronization increases reproductive success probabilities. Here, the moon not only tells time, it coordinates an underwater life explosion in perfect choreography. 18. The natural aquarium where the moon creates temporary pools. At Reynisfjara Beach in Iceland, spring tides associated with extreme lunar alignments expose and then submerge intertidal pools in a matter of hours. These pools become briefly isolated, trapping fish, crustaceans, and algae until the sea returns. The contrast is dramatic: black basalt columns, violent Atlantic waves, and suddenly ephemeral micro-ecosystems that exist only while the moon allows the sea to recede. It is a natural laboratory where the satellite creates and destroys habitats on a daily scale. 17. The National Park, where the moon reveals hidden waterfalls. In Yosemite National Park, USA, there is a phenomenon called a moonbow or lunar rainbow. When the full moon coincides with sufficient flow in Yosemite Falls, the light reflected in the waterfall's spray forms a rainbow visible at night. It's much fainter than a solar rainbow and appears only under very specific angle and lunar light conditions. For a few minutes, the sprayed water reveals a ghostly spectrum in complete darkness. It's a reminder that the moon not only influences Earth gravitationally, but also can paint its landscapes with indirect light. R16. The delta where the moon controls fishing. In the Mekong Delta of Vietnam, traditional fishermen plan their outings according to the lunar calendar. Spring tides determine which channels are navigable and when certain species move toward inland zones. Water level can vary enough to temporarily flood rice paddies. For centuries, local communities have used lunar calendars to anticipate these changes. In this network of rivers and sediments, the moon acts as a silent conductor regulating both water and the local economy. 15. The most dangerous standing wave in the world is born with the moon. At the Chantang River near Hangzhou, the world's largest tidal bore occurs, a wall of water that can exceed 9 meters in height and move upriver at more than 40 kilometers per hour. This phenomenon reaches maximum intensity during the Mid-Autumn Festival, when the full moon coincides with orbital conditions that reinforce tides. The funnel shape of Hangzhou Bay compresses ocean energy until turning it into a compact, violent wave that roars before appearing on the horizon. Thousands gather annually to watch, although the force is such that it has swept unprepared spectators in past editions. Gravitational synchronization is not anecdotal. When Earth, Moon, and Sun align, the extra push raises sea level enough to amplify the wave to extreme dimensions. Here, the lunar calendar not only marks a cultural date, but triggers one of the planet's most brutal hydrodynamic events. 14. The ice shelf that rises and falls with the moon. In the Weddell Sea, in front of the enormous Filchner-Ronne ice shelf, scientists have measured how the ice mass, hundreds of meters thick, rises and falls several centimeters twice daily due to the ocean tide induced by the moon. Although from the surface it seems like an immobile block, it actually partially floats over water and responds to gravitational pull as if breathing slowly. This rhythmic movement influences ice fracturing and the circulation of relatively warm water beneath the shelf, a key factor in its future stability. It's shocking to imagine a country-sized structure moving imperceptibly to the beat of a distant satellite. The moon doesn't just move open oceans, it also sways ice continents at the planet's southern extremity. 13. The submarine canyon that accelerates like a reversed river by lunar effect. In Monterey Bay, Monterey Canyon acts as an underwater funnel, intensifying tidal currents associated with lunar cycles. When the tide changes, huge water volumes are forced through the canyon, generating vertical flows that transport nutrients from the depths to the surface. This natural pumping feeds one of the most productive marine ecosystems on the U.S. coast, attracting whales, sharks, and massive fish schools. The system's primary energy comes from lunar gravitational pull amplified by underwater geography. It's as if the moon operates a giant biological pump, fertilizing the ocean with each tidal cycle. 12. The archipelago that almost disappears during extreme new moon. In the Maldives, one of the lowest countries globally, spring tides related to new or full moons can raise sea levels enough to flood roads and yards on islands barely more than a meter above the ocean average level. Although the change may seem small in absolute terms, every centimeter counts in flat coral atolls. During particularly strong alignments, salt water can infiltrate underground aquifers, affecting freshwater supply. The population follows lunar calendars not for symbolic tradition, but practical necessity. In this corner of the Indian Ocean, the difference between dry ground and water at the doorstep depends partly on the moon's exact sky position. 11. The cave where the sea flows in and out like a lunar lung. In Fingal's Cave, United Kingdom, the basalt interior of hexagonal columns acts as a natural acoustic chamber, where Atlantic tides governed by the moon rise and fall with deep rhythmic echoes. During spring tides, water level can rise several meters inside the cavity, completely transforming access and the internal landscape. The sound of the surf, amplified by geometric walls, turns each tidal cycle into an almost organic experience, as if the cave breathes. This is not poetic metaphor. The volume of water entering and exiting is directly linked to the lunar phase. In this rocky North Atlantic corner, the moon not only moves the sea, it creates a natural symphony that resonates in volcanic stone with astronomical precision. Remember to subscribe and like to continue learning incredible facts about every corner of our extraordinary world. 10. The Hawaiian volcano whose magma rises and falls with the moon. At Kilauea, in Hawaii, tiny but measurable variations in magma pressure have been recorded coinciding with Earth-solid tides caused by lunar gravity. The crust is not rigid, it deforms several centimeters daily due to the combined pull of the moon and sun. When the volcanic system is highly pressurized, these variations can alter gas emission rhythms or lava lake heights. Although the moon doesn't ignite the volcano alone, it can modulate its behavior when the system is already at the limit. High-precision instruments have detected correlations between lunar phases and changes in eruptive activity. It's unsettling to imagine the same satellite illuminating Hawaiian beaches also imperceptibly stretching the fiery interior beneath them. 9. The Sanctuary, where millions of crabs follow the moon. On Christmas Island, Australian territory, the massive migration of the red land crab is synchronized with the lunar calendar. After the first rains of the wet season, millions move toward the ocean, but the release of eggs happens specifically during lunar phases that guarantee tides suitable for dispersing larvae. The precision is such that if the lunar cycle doesn't align with necessary conditions, spawning is delayed. The result is a biological event that dyes roads and beaches intense red. Here, the moon not only regulates the sea, it organizes one of the densest and most synchronized migratory spectacles on the planet. 8. The Gulf, where the sea withdraws kilometers. In the Gulf of Khambat, India, tides can exceed a 10-meter difference, exposing vast marine floor areas. The narrow and elongated geometry of the Gulf amplifies lunar gravity's effect to extremes where the sea literally vanishes from the coastal horizon for hours. Fishermen and traditional gatherers take advantage of these temporary windows to walk on normally submerged areas. But the water's return is equally dramatic, advancing with force and speed. It's a scenario where the moon dictates when solid land exists and when the same surface becomes ocean again. 7. The archipelago where the moon draws giant whirlpools. In the Lofoten Islands, Norway, the current system known as the Moskstraumen generates powerful whirlpools fueled by lunar tides flowing through narrow channels between mountainous islands. During spring tides, water speed increases spectacularly, creating vortices visible from the air. These movements are not simple curiosities. For centuries, they fueled legends of sea monsters capable of sinking ships. The combination of submarine topography and gravitational force turns the place into a natural centrifuge where the ocean violently spins periodically to the lunar beat. 6. The estuary where dolphins hunt, according to the lunar phase. In the Sado River estuary, Portugal, studies have shown that hunting patterns of certain dolphin populations change with the intensity of tides associated with specific lunar phases. During stronger tides, fish are pushed into narrow channels, facilitating coordinated ambushes. The strategy depends on knowing exactly when water levels will rise or fall most intensely. It's not random behavior, it's tied to the gravitational calendar imposed by the moon on the ocean. In this Atlantic corner, the satellite not only moves water but influences the predatory tactics of highly intelligent marine mammals. 5. The city where the moon reveals invisible rivers. In London, the Thames River experiences tides that can expose archaeological remains and submerged structures when exceptionally low tides coincide with certain lunar phases. At those times, fragments of ancient docks and historical objects briefly emerge from the mud. This phenomenon has enabled discoveries usually hidden beneath turbid water. It's a temporary window to the past open thanks to lunar gravitational pull. In the heart of a modern metropolis, the moon decides when history can peek to the surface. 4. The sea where jellyfish multiply with the full moon. In the inland sea of Seto, Japan, increases in reproductive activity of certain jellyfish species have been observed during full moon phases. The higher nighttime brightness and tide changes act as synchronizing environmental signals. When millions of individuals release reproductive cells almost simultaneously, the water can take on a milky appearance. The moon acts as an ecological metronome, coordinating biological cycles in an environment where time and light are critical signals. 3. The Antarctic glacier that accelerates at full moon. In West Antarctica, Thwaites Glacier shows speed variations coinciding with ocean tides reinforced by lunar alignments. When the tide rises, water penetrates under the floating shelf, reducing friction and allowing slightly greater sliding. Though daily scale changes may seem small, accumulated over years, they influence the dynamics of one of the most closely monitored glaciers on Earth for its potential impact on global sea level. The moon, hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, indirectly participates in the rhythm of one of Earth's most critical ice systems. 2. The reef, where lunar darkness protects new generations. At Palmyra Atoll in the Central Pacific under U.S. administration, studies show some corals and fish prefer to release eggs during new moon nights. Darkness reduces visibility for predators and improves larval survival in their critical first hours. The synchronization is so precise it can repeat year after year with minimal variation. The moon, even when unseen in the sky, continues marking the optimal moment for the start of new underwater lives. 1. The place where the moon can slow Earth's rotation. On any coast of the planet, from Lisbon to San Francisco, each tide represents an energy transfer between Earth's rotation and the lunar orbit. The tide friction caused by the moon's gravity acts as a microscopic brake, slowing Earth's rotation by a few milliseconds per century. That same process gradually pushes the moon away about 3.8 centimeters per year. It's a continuous cosmic exchange. Earth loses speed while the moon gains distance. Every wave rising and falling on our coasts is part of that invisible mechanism that very slowly is rewriting day length and the future architecture of the Earth-Moon system. After learning these 35 geographical facts about the moon and its effects on our Earth and geography, tell us, did someone make you believe any false fact you'd like to debunk? Leave your answers in the comments and let's see how many of us think the same. And speaking of choosing, the best thing we can do is watch the video on screen. That way we'll become true experts in world geography. But before you go, don't forget to subscribe and hit like so we can keep learning together. See you in the video.